The date is March 15, 1943. A converted Liberty ship cuts through the cold Atlantic waters, heading west toward America. Below deck, packed into what were once cargo holds, sit 800 German prisoners of war. Most are from the Afrika Korps, Rommel's legendary desert fighters captured during the North African campaign. Among them is Oberleutnant Hans Werner, a 24-year-old tank commander from Munich. For the past 2 years, he's fought across the deserts of Libya and Tunisia, believing absolutely in the superiority of German engineering, German discipline, and ultimately, German victory. Now, standing on the deck as the American coastline appears on the horizon, Werner and his fellow prisoners are about to receive an education that will fundamentally alter their understanding of the war they've been fighting. This is not a story about combat. This is a story about a psychological shock so profound that it would help reshape the post-war world. Because what these German soldiers were about to witness wasn't just American industrial capacity. It was a glimpse into why Germany could never win this war. To understand the shock these men experienced, we must first understand what they believed about America. German propaganda, masterfully crafted by Joseph Goebbels' ministry, had painted a very specific picture of the United States. America was depicted as a nation in decline, a mongrel country weakened by racial mixing, corrupted by Jewish influence, and softened by democracy and capitalism. The German soldiers had been told that America was a land of gangsters and unemployment, where the Great Depression had never truly ended. More importantly, they'd been assured that America lacked industrial capacity. Yes, America was large, but it was inefficient. Its factories were poorly organized. Its workers were undisciplined. Its equipment was inferior to German engineering. The Führer himself had dismissed American industrial potential, famously calling America a nation of millionaires, beauty queens, stupid records, and Hollywood. Hans Werner believed all of this. Why wouldn't he? He'd seen German tanks, German aircraft, German weapons. He'd fought in a Panzer IV, a machine that represented the pinnacle of military engineering. He'd seen the Luftwaffe dominate European skies. He'd witnessed the Wehrmacht conquer nation after nation with ruthless efficiency. Even in defeat, captured in Tunisia, Werner and his comrades consoled themselves with certain truths. Germany was outmanned but not outclassed. The Allies had won through numbers, not quality. And America was barely a factor. Sure, they'd sent some troops, but how long could a soft, democratic nation sustain a real war? The ship approaches New York Harbor. Werner and several hundred other prisoners are allowed on deck to get fresh air. What they see next will begin to shatter everything they believe. The Statue of Liberty emerges from the morning mist. Werner barely notices it. What captures his attention, what captures every prisoner's attention, is what lies beyond. The New York skyline. Werner has seen Berlin, Munich, Paris, Rome. He considers himself worldly. But nothing has prepared him for this. The Empire State Building towers over Manhattan, the tallest structure in the world. Around it, dozens of skyscrapers create a jagged mountain range of steel and glass. The sheer scale is overwhelming. But it's not just the buildings. It's the harbor itself. As far as the eye can see, ships fill the water. Not warships, cargo ships. Dozens of them. Liberty ships being loaded with supplies, tankers filled with fuel, transport ships preparing to carry troops and equipment. Massive cranes line the docks, swinging cargo with mechanical precision. The activity is ceaseless, organized, overwhelming. Werner turns to his friend, Feldwebel Carl Schmidt. "This is just one harbor," he says quietly. "How many harbors does America have?" Schmidt doesn't answer. He's staring at a sight that seems impossible, a Liberty ship sliding down the ways at a nearby shipyard. These prisoners don't know it yet, but American shipyards are now launching an average of 3 Liberty ships per day. 3 complete cargo vessels. Every single day. A pattern is beginning to form in Werner's mind, but he pushes it away. This is just New York, he tells himself. This is America's largest city. It's not representative of the whole country. The ship docks. The prisoners are processed and prepared for transfer to inland camps. They're about to take a train journey that will complete their education in American industrial might. The prisoners are loaded onto a passenger train, not cattle cars, which surprises them immediately. German and Soviet treatment of POWs typically involved the most minimal transport possible. But here they are, sitting in actual passenger seats, albeit guarded. The train pulls out of New York, heading west. For the next 3 days, these men will cross America, and what they see will systematically destroy their understanding of the war. The first shock comes within an hour of leaving New York. The train passes through industrial New Jersey, and Werner presses his face against the window, trying to comprehend what he's seeing. Factories. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Massive industrial complexes stretching for miles, smokestacks pumping out columns of smoke, rail yards filled with freight cars. Through one chain-link fence, Werner spots rows upon rows of trucks, military trucks, painted in olive drab, lined up in perfect formation as far as he can see. How many trucks? Schmidt mutters beside him. Thousands, Werner replies. Just sitting there, waiting to be shipped. What Werner doesn't know is that these are GMC CCKW trucks, the famous Deuce and a Half. That will become the workhorse of the Allied war effort. American factories are producing them at a rate of 50,000 per month. Per month. More trucks in a single month than Germany's entire annual production capacity. As the train enters Pennsylvania, the industrial landscape becomes even more overwhelming. They pass through areas where the sky itself seems to glow orange at night from the blast furnaces of steel mills. One prisoner, a former steel worker from Essen, home of the Krupp works, begins to weep quietly. His neighbor asks what's wrong. The scale, he says. These mills, they're larger than anything we have. And there are so many of them. He's right. The prisoners are passing through the heart of American steel country, Pittsburgh, Bethlehem, Gary. These mills are producing steel at rates that dwarf German capacity. In 1943, America will produce 88.8 million tons of steel. Germany, by comparison, will produce 30.6 million tons. But it's not just the quantity that shocks these men. It's the modernity. Through the windows, they catch glimpses of electric arc furnaces, continuous casting operations, automated handling systems. The German steel industry, for all its reputation, is surprisingly antiquated by comparison. Many facilities still rely on methods developed in the 19th century. Werner watches a facility where massive steel plates are being rolled. A German officer next to him, an engineer in civilian life, does rapid calculations in his head. If that one facility is operating at full capacity, he says, it's producing enough steel plate for, I don't know, perhaps 20 Tiger tanks per day. Just in steel. And we can barely make 1 Tiger per day total. The German prisoners begin to talk among themselves. The conversations start optimistically. Perhaps this is propaganda. Perhaps they're being shown only the most impressive facilities. But as the hours turn into days, and the industrial landscape never seems to end, a grim realization sets in. On the second day, the train enters the Midwest. The industrial landscape gives way to farmland, and for a brief moment, some prisoners feel relieved. Surely this will be like European farmland, small plots, traditional methods. They're wrong. The farms they see are enormous beyond comprehension. Fields stretch to the horizon, not the small, hedge-divided plots of Germany, but vast rectangular expanses of wheat, corn, and soybeans. Modern tractors and combine harvesters work the fields, replacing the manual labor that still dominates European agriculture. Werner sees one farm, just one, that appears to be larger than his entire home village's agricultural land combined. And that's just one farm. They pass hundreds of them. A former farmer from Bavaria speaks up. We were told America was starving, that the Depression had destroyed their agriculture, that they couldn't even feed themselves. We were told many things, Werner replies quietly. What these prisoners don't realize is that they're witnessing the American agricultural revolution in full swing. Mechanization, chemical fertilizers, hybrid crops. American farms are producing surplus food on a scale never before seen in human history. While Germany is implementing rationing and struggling to feed its population and military, America is producing so much food that it can supply not just its own forces but also Britain, the Soviet Union, and other allies through Lend-Lease. The train stops in a small Iowa town for servicing. The prisoners are allowed to stretch their legs on the platform, under guard. Werner watches the townspeople going about their business. What strikes him isn't hostility. In fact, several locals wave politely. What strikes him is normalcy. People are well dressed. Children look healthy. The stores visible from the platform appear well stocked. There are no signs of deprivation, no evidence of a nation struggling under wartime hardship. An American guard, a farm boy from Nebraska who speaks some German, chats with Werner. Your first time in America? He asks. Werner nods. What do you think? Werner hesitates, then answers honestly. It's not what I expected. Yeah, I bet your propaganda boys told you we were all starving and unemployed, right? The guard laughs. My dad's farm is doing better than ever. Government's buying everything we can produce. My brother works at a bomber plant in Omaha. Says they're making so many planes they're running out of places to park them. That night, unable to sleep as the train continues west, Werner and several other officers huddle together, trying to make sense of what they've seen. One of them, a former logistics officer, attempts calculations based on what they've observed. How many factories? How many workers? How much production? The numbers become increasingly absurd. No matter how conservatively they estimate, the American industrial capacity appears to be 5, 10, perhaps 20 times larger than Germany's. And that's just what they can see from a train window. It's impossible, one officer insists. No nation could build that much, that fast. It must be a trick. They're showing us the same factories over and over, routing the train in circles. But they have compasses. They can see the sun. The train is heading steadily west. These aren't the same factories. This isn't a trick. Another officer, a party member who had been a true believer, speaks up. His voice is hollow. Do you remember what we were told at the beginning of the war? That America was weak, that they couldn't produce, that democracy makes nations soft? Everyone nods. We were lied to, he says simply. Or our leaders didn't know. I'm not sure which is worse. Werner stares out the window at the American night. Small towns pass by, each one lit up with electric lights, casual, wasteful illumination that would never be permitted in wartime Germany. Even the small towns are electrified. Even the farms have electric lights. The scale of Germany's miscalculation is beginning to dawn on him. This isn't just about industrial capacity. This is about fundamental assumptions. Germany had entered the war believing in qualitative superiority, that German discipline, German engineering, German racial purity would overcome any numerical disadvantage. But what they're seeing suggests something far more troubling. America has both quantity and quality. Those aren't antiquated factories. Those aren't inefficient farms. This is a modern, mechanized, organized industrial colossus that Germany cannot match. And America entered the war less than 2 years ago. What will it look like in another 2 years? The train finally arrives at its destination, Camp Alva in Oklahoma. This is one of dozens of POW camps scattered across America, holding over 400,000 German prisoners by war's end. The prisoners file off the train, exhausted from the journey but alert, taking in every detail of their new surroundings. What they see continues the pattern of shock. The camp is substantial, hundreds of barracks arranged in neat rows, surrounded by wire fencing and guard towers. But what immediately strikes Werner isn't the camp itself. It's everything around it. In the distance, perhaps a mile away, he can see what appears to be a military airfield. As they watch, bomber after bomber takes off in steady succession, B-17s or B-24s. Werner can't tell the difference yet, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the number. One every few minutes. Constant. Relentless. Where are they all going? Schmidt asks. Training flights. An American guard explains in broken German. This is just a training base. The real operational bases are on the coasts. Just a training base. The implications are staggering. If this secondary facility is churning out trained bomber crews at this rate, what must the primary bases look like? The prisoners are processed and assigned to barracks. The accommodations are Spartan but adequate, far better than German POWs would receive in Soviet camps, better even than many German soldiers experience at the front. Each prisoner receives a clean mattress, 2 blankets, a pillow, soap, a towel, and basic toiletries. That evening, the prisoners receive their first American meal. The shock continues. The mess hall is large enough to accommodate hundreds of men. The prisoners queue up with metal trays, expecting the thin soups and black bread that characterized their final weeks in North Africa. What they receive instead seems like fantasy. Werner stares at his tray, a substantial portion of beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, 2 slices of white bread, butter, and a piece of apple pie. Coffee, real coffee, not ersatz, is available in unlimited quantities. The prisoners sit in stunned silence. Then, slowly, they begin to eat. Some wolf down the food, having been malnourished in North Africa. Others eat slowly, almost reverently. This is more meat than I've seen in 2 years, one soldier says. The bread is white, another observes. Pure white flour. No sawdust, no filler. When did we last see bread like this in Germany? An older Feldwebel who fought in World War I speaks up. 1916, he says. The last time I ate this well was 1916, before the blockade. And we were winning then. The implications hang heavy in the air. The guards laugh and joke among themselves, clearly enjoying their own identical meals. This isn't special treatment for prisoners. This is standard. This is what ordinary American soldiers eat. Every day. Werner thinks about his family back in Munich. His mother's letters, carefully censored, have hinted at growing food shortages. Rationing has become increasingly strict. The meat portions have shrunk. Coffee is a distant memory, replaced by acorn substitutes. And here, in a prisoner camp in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, they're being fed better than German soldiers at the front. Over the following days, the pattern continues. Every meal is substantial. The quality never wavers. The abundance is consistent. The prisoners actually begin to gain weight. Many had been malnourished after months in North Africa and the journey across the Atlantic. After 2 weeks of acclimatization, the prisoners are assigned to work details. Under the Geneva Convention, POWs can be required to work, provided the work isn't directly related to the war effort. Werner's group is assigned to work on local farms, harvesting crops. This, he thinks, will at least be familiar. Farm work is farm work, regardless of nation. He's wrong again. They're transported by truck to a large farm owned by a German-American family named Schmidt, no relation to his friend Karl. The farm is enormous, over 2,000 acres. The farmer, Otto Schmidt, speaks German fluently and treats the prisoners with distant but fair courtesy. What shocks Werner is the equipment. The farm has 3 tractors, large, modern machines. There's a combine harvester that can do the work of 50 men. The barn contains electric lighting, refrigeration, and even a radio. The farmhouse, visible in the distance, appears to have indoor plumbing and electricity. This is a farm. A single farm. And it has more mechanization than most German factories Werner has seen. Otto Schmidt addresses the prisoners in German. "You'll be working alongside my regular hands," he says. "You'll be paid 80 cents per day in camp scrip, which you can use at the canteen. Work hard, don't cause trouble, and we'll get along fine." 80 cents per day. It's almost nothing by American standards, but the prisoners later learn that German POWs in America are actually being paid, something that shocks them further. In German camps, prisoners work for nothing. As they work through the day, Werner observes the American farm workers. They're mostly older men and teenage boys. The young men are away at war. But they work with casual efficiency, operating machines that multiplied their productivity many times over. During a lunch break, and the lunch is substantial, sandwiches with actual meat, fruit, lemonade, Werner chats with one of the American workers, a 16-year-old boy named Tommy. "Your father fight in the war?" Werner asks in halting English. "Yeah," Tommy replies. "He's with Patton somewhere in Italy now. My older brother's in the Pacific, on a carrier." "You have brothers in both wars?" Werner struggles with the English. "Well, yeah. We're fighting Germany and Japan. My sister's even in the WACs, Women's Army Corps. She's a truck mechanic at a base in Georgia." Werner does the math in his head. This single American family has 3 children serving in the military, on opposite sides of the globe, and the farm is still operating at full capacity because of mechanization. The scale of American mobilization is beyond anything he imagined. On Sunday, the prisoners have free time. Many visit the camp canteen, where they can purchase items using the scrip they've earned from work. Werner expects the canteen to offer basic necessities, perhaps soap, writing paper, tobacco. What he finds is more like a small department store. There are racks of clothing, not just uniforms but casual clothes. Shelves of toiletries, multiple brands of soap, shaving cream, toothpaste. A selection of books and magazines in German. Writing supplies. Candy bars. Cigarettes of various brands. Even luxury items like wristwatches and fountain pens. But what truly astounds Werner is a corner of the canteen displaying American consumer products, Coca-Cola, chewing gum, comic books, baseball equipment, playing cards, harmonicas, and other musical instruments. "They have Coca-Cola," Carl Schmidt says, staring. "We're prisoners in a war camp, and they have Coca-Cola." Werner buys a bottle, paying 5 cents from his scrip. The sweet, carbonated drink is unlike anything he's tasted. It seems to encapsulate something essential about America, frivolous, excessive, yet somehow appealing. That evening, sitting in the barracks with several other prisoners, Werner opens a package he purchased, Wrigley's chewing gum. The packaging is colorful, cheerful, completely at odds with the gray, utilitarian packaging of wartime Germany. "I had a professor at university," Werner says slowly, "who taught us that America was a decadent nation that had sacrificed greatness for comfort. That democracy made nations weak and soft." He holds up the chewing gum package. "But this," he continues, "this requires industrial capacity. The machinery to produce it, the supply chain to distribute it, the economic surplus to sell it. And they're selling it in a prison camp, as an afterthought, while fighting a 2-front war against us and Japan." An older prisoner, a veteran of the Eastern Front, nods grimly. "I fought in Russia," he says. "I saw how the Soviets fight, with masses of men, tanks, artillery. Overwhelming numbers. Accepting terrible casualties. And I thought, we can outlast this. German quality will prevail over Soviet quantity. He pauses, looking around at the well-lit barracks, the well-fed prisoners, the casual abundance. But America, he continues, America has both. They have the numbers and the quality. And more than that, they have surplus. They're fighting us and Japan simultaneously, feeding Britain and Russia through Lend-Lease, and their civilians are still eating better than our soldiers. The truth is settling over the prisoners like a heavy fog. Germany cannot win this war. Not against this. Not against an enemy that has so much that they can casually provide prisoners with chewing gum and Coca-Cola while simultaneously outproducing the Reich in every category that matters. One of the most disorienting aspects of captivity for the German prisoners is access to information. In the camp, they're allowed to receive German-language newspapers, listen to certain radio broadcasts, and even watch newsreels, all carefully selected by American authorities, but far more information than they received under German military censorship. Werner becomes an avid reader of the Deutsche Kriegsgefangenen Zeitung, a newspaper produced specifically for German POWs. Initially, he's skeptical. Clearly, this is American propaganda. But as weeks turn to months, patterns emerge that are impossible to dismiss. The newspaper reports on the progress of the war, always from the Allied perspective. The invasion of Sicily. The fall of Mussolini. The relentless advance of the Red Army in the East. The increasing devastation of German cities from Allied bombing. What's striking isn't just the content, it's the specificity. The newspaper publishes photographs, detailed maps, casualty figures. Unlike German propaganda, which deals in vague optimism and unspecified victories, the American material is concrete, verifiable. But more than the war news, it's the domestic American news that shocks the prisoners. There are articles about labor disputes in American factories, strikes being negotiated, unions demanding better wages. There are political cartoons criticizing Roosevelt and his administration. There are opinion pieces debating war strategy. They publish criticism of their own government, Carl Schmidt says, incredulous. In a newspaper. During wartime, a political officer among the prisoners, a committed Nazi, tries to frame this as weakness. This is what democracy brings: disorder, lack of unity, degeneracy. But Werner and others aren't so sure. Or, Werner suggests carefully, it means they're strong enough that internal debate doesn't threaten them. We have unity because dissent means death. They have debate because they can afford it. Many of the prisoners eventually have opportunities to interact with German-American civilians, farmers who employ them, guards with German ancestry, even civilians who volunteer at the camps teaching English or organizing recreational activities. For Werner, a profound moment comes when he meets Heinrich Müller, a German immigrant who came to America in 1923. Müller owns a hardware store in the nearby town and occasionally visits the camp to sell goods. Werner asks him, in German, why he left Germany. No future there. Müller replies simply. After the First War, everything was chaos. No jobs, no money, no hope. I heard America needed workers, so I came. But don't you miss Germany? The culture, the tradition? Müller considers this. I miss some things. The beer, the Christmas markets. But miss living there? He shakes his head. I own my own business. My children go to good schools. We have a house with electricity, running water, central heating. My wife has a washing machine, a refrigerator. We own a car, a new car. He pauses, then adds, I'm not rich. I'm middle class. Normal. And I have things that German industrialists couldn't afford before I left. That's America. But the mixing of races, Werner says, repeating what he's been taught. The loss of German identity. Müller laughs, not unkindly. My children are American. They speak English better than German. They play baseball and eat hamburgers. And you know what? They're happy. They're free. They'll have opportunities one never dreamed of. He looks Werner in the eye. Whatever you were told about America destroying German culture, it's backwards. America lets Germans be successful. It's Germany that destroys Germans. The conversation haunts Werner for days. Here is a man of his own ethnic background, someone who could have stayed and supported the Reich's rise to power, who instead found prosperity and happiness in the very nation Germany is fighting. Several months into his captivity, Werner develops an infected tooth. The pain becomes unbearable, and he's taken to the camp medical facility. The clinic is clean, well-equipped, and staffed by American military doctors and dentists. Werner is treated by a dentist of German-Jewish ancestry, Captain David Strauss, who fled Germany in 1938. As Strauss works on Werner's tooth, using Novocaine, modern equipment, proper sterile technique, he makes conversation. "First time to an American dentist?" he asks. Werner nods, his mouth full of instruments. "I practiced in Berlin before I left." Strauss continues conversationally. "Had a good practice. Then the Nuremberg laws made it impossible for Jews to work. So I left, along with thousands of other doctors, scientists, engineers. Germany's loss, America's gain." He finishes the procedure. The tooth is saved, the infection treated with sulfate drugs. No charge to Werner. It's covered under the Geneva Convention's requirements for prisoner medical care. As Werner leaves, Strauss calls after him. "By the way, that bomber that probably flies over every day. The B-17? A Jewish engineer named Samuel Gelfand designed crucial parts of its oxygen system. The penicillin that's saving thousands of lives? Developed by a team that included several Jewish researchers. The atomic research your intelligence services keep hearing whispers about? Half the scientists are Jews who fled Europe." He smiles without humor. "Your government threw away some of its best minds because of their religion. We welcome them. How do you think that math works out?" Werner walks back to his barracks in silence. He's beginning to understand that Germany's defeat isn't just about industrial capacity or resources. It's about ideas. America's openness, its willingness to accept people from anywhere, its messy democratic system, these aren't weaknesses. They're sources of strength. In late 1944, Werner and his fellow prisoners watch a newsreel of the D-Day invasion. The scale is incomprehensible. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of men. The logistics of transporting, supplying, and coordinating such an operation across the English Channel while simultaneously fighting in Italy, North Africa, and the Pacific. After the newsreel, the prisoners sit in stunned silence. Finally, an older officer speaks up, a colonel who had been an early believer in the Nazi cause. "We've lost," he says simply. "Even if the newsreel is exaggerated by half, even if they're lying about some of it, the scale, we've lost." Others want to argue, but the colonel continues. "I've been here 9 months. I've seen the factories from the train. I've seen the farms. I've eaten the food. I've watched the bombers take off every day. I've talked to the guards, the farmers, the civilians." He looks around at his fellow prisoners. "Germany is being bombed day and night. Our cities are rubble. Our industries are working at partial capacity. We're fighting on multiple fronts, running out of fuel, running out of men. Meanwhile, American prisoners in our camps are starving, and American soldiers here are complaining that the coffee isn't fresh enough." He stands. "The war is over. We just haven't surrendered yet. The only question now is how many more will die before we admit it." As 1945 unfolds, news from Europe becomes increasingly grim for the German prisoners. The Rhine is crossed. Berlin is encircled. And then, finally, on May 8, 1945, surrender. The prisoners gather in the camp's recreation hall to hear the news. Many weep, not from sadness at Germany's defeat, but from relief that the killing has finally stopped. Some still cling to propaganda about miracle weapons and last-minute victory, but most have long since accepted the inevitable. Werner sits with Carl Schmidt, both men lost in their own thoughts. "When do you think we'll go home?" Carl asks. Werner shakes his head. "Home to what? We've heard the reports. Our cities are destroyed. The economy is shattered. Millions dead. We'll rebuild," Carl says without much conviction. "With what?" Werner asks. "With what resources? What infrastructure? What industrial base?" He gestures around at the camp, at the abundance that has characterized every aspect of their captivity. "We couldn't match this when we were trying. How will we rebuild from nothing?" What Werner doesn't yet know is that America is already planning Germany's reconstruction. The Marshall Plan is being conceived, a program that will invest billions of American dollars into rebuilding Europe, including former enemies. The idea seems impossible, almost insane. Why would the victor help rebuild the vanquished? But it's quintessentially American, the same practical generosity that feeds prisoners well, the same long-term thinking that builds industrial capacity far beyond immediate needs. America understands something that Germany never grasped: building up former enemies into stable, prosperous democracies is cheaper than keeping them defeated and resentful. Over the following months, prisoners begin the slow process of repatriation. It's not quick, shipping is limited, priorities must be set, and authorities need to screen prisoners to identify war criminals and ardent Nazis. Werner and his fellow prisoners undergo extensive interviews. They're also offered educational programs, classes in democracy, American history, and surprisingly, practical skills for rebuilding Germany. Some prisoners dismiss these as propaganda, but many, Werner included, participate actively. He takes a class taught by a German-American professor on democratic governance. The professor doesn't pretend democracy is perfect. "Democracy is messy," the professor explains. "It's slow. It's frustrating. People argue constantly. But here's what it does: it gives everyone a voice. It creates systems where problems get addressed before they explode. It allows peaceful transfers of power. And most importantly, it makes government accountable to the people, not the other way around." He looks at the assembled prisoners. "Your country tried the opposite. Total unity, absolute obedience, perfect order. And where did it lead? To the most destructive war in human history. To genocide. To the complete destruction of Germany itself." Werner wants to argue, to defend something. But what? The regime he served led Germany to ruin. The propaganda he believed was systematically dismantled by reality. The superiority he assumed proved to be an illusion. Before his repatriation, Werner has a final conversation with Captain Strauss, the dentist who treated him. "Why did you join the American Army?" Werner asks. "You could have stayed out of it. You'd already escaped." Strauss considers this. "Because America gave me a chance when Germany wanted me dead. Because the country that welcomed me was fighting against the ideology that persecuted me. It seemed simple. Will you hate us forever? The Germans, I mean?" Strauss shakes his head. "I don't hate Germans. I hate Nazism. There's a difference. Some of my family died in the camps, I found out after the liberation. But I don't think that means every German is responsible." He pauses. "Here's what I think: Germany went down an evil path. But paths can change. Germany can rebuild, can become something better. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. But it's possible." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen what America did. This country wasn't always great. It had slavery, it had discrimination, it still has problems. But it keeps trying to be better. It makes mistakes and corrects them. That's the secret, not perfection, but the ability to change. He extends his hand. Go home, Werner. Help rebuild your country. But build it differently this time. Build it as a democracy, as a nation of laws, as a place that welcomes debate instead of crushing it. Build it like America, in other words. Werner shakes his hand, surprised by the gesture of reconciliation. In late 1946, Werner finally boards a ship back to Europe. The journey gives him time to reflect on everything he's experienced. He thinks about the factories he saw from the train, producing goods in quantities Germany could never match. The farms that fed millions while still generating surplus. The abundance in a prison camp that exceeded German civilian life. The casual displays of technological and industrial might that never seemed to end. But more than that, he thinks about the ideas. Democracy messy but effective. Openness that attracts talent from everywhere. A system that tolerates criticism because it's strong enough to improve. Generosity born not from weakness but from confidence. The ship docks in Bremen. Werner steps onto German soil for the first time in 4 years. The city is ruins, partially cleared rubble, hastily erected temporary structures, people thin and weary. The contrast with America is stark, almost unbearable. He makes his way to Munich, traveling on damaged rail lines through devastated landscapes. His family's apartment building is still standing, miraculously, though damaged. His mother is alive, thinner than he remembers, aged beyond her years. His father didn't survive the war, killed in the bombing of a factory where he worked. That night, sitting in the cold apartment, there's no coal for heating, his mother asks him about America. Werner thinks about his answer carefully. He could tell her about the skyscrapers, the factories, the abundance. But what comes out is simpler. Muddy, he says. We never had a chance. Not from the beginning. And the terrible thing is, our leaders knew it. They had to know it. But they sent us to fight anyway. His mother nods slowly. She's lived through 2 world wars now. She understands. What happens now? She asks. Werner thinks about Captain Strauss's words, about democracy and change and building something better. No, he says. We rebuild. But differently this time. Hans Werner would spend the rest of his life in Germany, becoming a successful businessman in the post-war economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder. He never joined another political movement, never expressed nostalgia for the Nazi era, never claimed that Germany had been defeated by anything other than its own terrible choices. When asked about his time as a prisoner of war, he would say something that surprised many people. Those years in America taught me more than all my years in the Wehrmacht. They taught me what a country could be when it valued freedom over order, abundance over militarism, and practical generosity over ideological purity. He wasn't alone. Hundreds of thousands of German POWs returned from America with similar stories, similar realizations. Many became leaders in building the new democratic Germany, the federal republic that would become one of America's closest allies and a model of stable democracy. The psychological shock these men experienced, the systematic dismantling of their propaganda-fed beliefs through simple observation of American reality, played a crucial role in Germany's post-war transformation. They had seen the future, and it didn't belong to authoritarian efficiency or racial ideology. It belonged to messy democracy, open societies, and industrial capitalism. The prisoners who rode that train across America in 1943 witnessed more than just factories and farms. They witnessed an idea made manifest, that a free society, properly organized, could outproduce, outfight, and ultimately outlast any dictatorship, no matter how disciplined or militarized. Germany had bet everything on the idea that will and ideology could overcome material reality. America proved that material reality, backed by democratic values and unleashed human potential, would always win in the end. The German prisoners returned home shocked, defeated, but strangely hopeful. They had seen what was possible. Now they would help build it in their own land. The story of German POWs in America is often overlooked in the grand narrative of World War II. We remember the battles, the leaders, the great strategic decisions. But sometimes the most profound moments happen not on battlefields, but in the quiet realization that everything you believed was wrong. Those prisoners riding trains across America, eating well in camp mess halls, working on mechanized farms, and browsing stocked canteens weren't just witnessing American industrial might. They were receiving an education in what makes nations truly powerful, not just weapons and factories, but ideas, systems, and values that unleash human potential rather than constraining it. Their shock was real. Their reassessment was genuine. And their contribution to building a new, democratic Germany was invaluable. The lesson remains relevant today. Power comes not just from resources but from the systems that organize them, not just from control but from freedom, not just from uniformity but from diversity. America's industrial might shock those German prisoners, but what truly changed them was understanding where that might came from. It came from the same place all true strength comes from: free people, working together, building something greater than themselves. That was the real shock. And that was the lesson that helped reshape the world.